putting in my pasta attachment. I got a request on email to do lasagnas today. You have to excuse the condition of my kitchen. We're remodeling, but even in a mess, I'm going to show you 2 lasagnas. One Alfredo, one red sauce. Let's get cooking. All right, we're going to start out with making the pasta for the lasagnas. I've made ravioli dough before. When I do homemades or I do a lasagna, I just do a slight variation because I want it to taste good, okay? I'm going to do it on the counter and hopefully it won't run all over the floor. 2, 3. Now I always add about 3½ cups of flour, not quite 3 3/4, because I'm going to use 4 eggs. I don't like to add a lot of water to a dough that I'm going to add really good olive oil to. Okay, we're going to crack our eggs in the middle here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the reason why I start out with, usually pasta is equal parts of flour and eggs, but eggs can be smaller, they're not quite as large, and you have to go by the weight. So that's why I tend to put 3½, 3 3/4, because you can always add flour to the dough. But when you got to add water and moisten it, it gives it, a different texture, a softer texture. I like this a little more bitey. I'm adding salt, naturally, you got to have some flavor there. And I'm going to use a really good virgin olive oil. I don't cook on the stove, pan fry with a virgin olive oil, but I'll add it to my food because it has a nice flavor. Okay, and we're gonna beat these up in the center here. I have a cup of ice water. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by adding probably about 1/4 cup, which is about 2 tablespoons or so. But I'm not going to add a lot. I don't want a lot of water. The more water you add, the softer your dough is. I like a soft ravioli dough, but I like a nice, bitey, homemade or lasagna dough. Now, the secret to not having an earthquake, which I hope I can do it, 'cause sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, you come right around the edge and pull the flour in. You have to leave a little bit of the wall up so that it doesn't get away from you. And as you're pulling your flour in, you're going to see if this is wet enough or not. I think I got enough water here. Now see, I've made it through, so I'm just going to work the stuff in. This is why I wear my apron, because naturally I'm in black and the flour is white. Now this is going to seem stiff, and that's okay, because we're going to knead it up and we're going to let it rest. It's a little too dry. See how this is falling apart? You kind of don't want it like that. We're going to add just a little tiny tish of water, and it's going to be a very tiny tish. And I'm going to put it into here because this is what I'm having trouble folding in. This is pretty much mixed in, and that's how I add the water to the homemade dough. If you want to buy your pasta, buy your pasta. That's just as good. I buy pasta, I make pasta. Depends on if I'm in a rush, if I have the time, if it's a really huge lasagna. Okay, so we're going to knead this up a little bit. Okay, now we're going to cover this because as the flour, as the dough sits, the water and the flour are going to come together. Just like the gnocchi, how it starts out really dry, after it rests 10-15 minutes, it's gonna be nice and moist because the flour will absorb the moisture. Takes a little time. And we'll be back. I need a specific wooden spoon to stir my ricotta with. I'm very picky. Okay. I have 2 pounds of ricotta. I'm going to use 4 eggs. 1, 2. Carl, if we get any shells in here, it's for you. Okay? Make sure you get that piece. 3. And 4. Okay. Now, I gotta have a paper towel. Can you believe I don't have a towel in my pocket? Oh my God, we might have to stop. All right, let's go. My hand, this is a good 3/4 of a cup to a cup. Cheese, Romano cheese. I'm gonna use at least 1.5 cups to start with. Now when I season my ricotta, I use cheese, salt, pepper, parsley. That's it. I like to taste the ricotta. The salt I'm gonna put about maybe a tablespoon or so. The pepper I use like 1/4 teaspoon. I don't use a lot. You can look in my hand. That's it. I don't like to taste the coarse crushed pepper. Nothing worse than biting into a chunk of pepper. Gross. This is the same filling as my ricotta for my raviolis. And that's it. That's it. 4 eggs, 2 pounds of ricotta, 1.5 cups of cheese, salt, and a little tiny tish of pepper. And we're good to rock and roll. Stir it around. See how perfect this little spoon is? That's why I gotta find this particular spoon. You probably think that I'm fooling you, but I know what spoon I like to use for what job. Now naturally, after you mix this, I have to taste it. I know there's raw eggs and you gotta be careful, but it's cold ricotta and cold eggs. It hasn't had time to ferment. I need a little bit more cheese. Okay, that's how you taste if you have enough cheese. If you taste it and it's cheesy, great. If you like it cheesy. Carl, you're gonna try to well, let me mix in the cheese for crying out loud, Carl. You're gonna get a big ball of cheese. All righty. And this is the ricotta for our lasagna. And we'll be back. Okay. Now this dough has rested. You can tell by the texture that it's, softened up. It is a little tougher than the ravioli dough because I like it a little more bitey when I'm doing a lasagna. We're just gonna flatten these out and we're going to roll. Okay, now as you notice, I didn't need a lot of flour because this dough is a little bit drier than the ravioli dough. I have my cutter. I'm gonna grab my pan right here because what I wanna do is I wanna try to cut them the length of the pan so that you're just doing one piece, okay? You might need 2. Or to fill it in. I went down to 4 on these. It's not a real thin pasta, but it's not real thick either. Okay. Now let's check our water. Not quite ready. We're going to take a 2-minute break. Before we drop our pasta, we need to have our water boiling. I'm gonna start an Alfredo sauce. I'm gonna put it on a medium heat. You wanna do this slow. Notice my new gas burners. Okay, we're gonna put about a teaspoon or two of butter in here. And I'm gonna melt it down because when I make an Alfredo sauce for a lasagna or something that's gonna bake a long time, I put a little bit of flour in it to, number one, help with the thickening and to hold it so that it doesn't break. And number two, you don't want to add so much Romano cheese in the Alfredo sauce at this point that it overpowers, because a lasagna has so much cheese in it. You don't want to overpower. So you do a little bit of a, it's more like a cheese sauce, but it's in an Alfredo style. Okay? Alrighty, here we go. We're going to drop about a teaspoon of flour in there. And we're just going to melt it down a little bit. You don't want to cook it too much, because then what happens is it gets dark. You don't want a dark cheese sauce either. Now in this bowl, I have 2 cups of heavy cream, and I'm going to add 2 eggs. Okay, there we go. And I'm naturally going to pull this off because gas does go very quickly. It's a much hotter heat. We want to beat in our eggs. We want to get them incorporated because you don't want to have scrambled eggs. Okay, and then we're going to put this back on the heat, and we're going to put this in here, and we're going to incorporate it with the butter and the flour. Now, I'm learning curve in here because I'm not sure how this heat is going to work. Might be really intense, and I got to put it down. You don't want to boil this. You don't want to bring it to a boil. We're going to add a very little bit of salt, maybe about a half a teaspoon or so. That's about it. We're going to add a slight sprinkle of pepper, because again, I don't like too heavy. And we're going to add some parsley to give it a nice little green color, a little hint of an herb. Okay? And then we're going to add a good cup of Romano cheese. Okay? There we go. And this is going to be our Alfredo. Now we're going to take this up nice and slow. We're not going to do this quickly, because all that will happen is it'll curdle and you'll have a big mess. We don't want a big mess. You want to stir this as you go. Make sure you stir it constantly, because if it boils, it will get away from you. The flour won't show its thickening until this is really at almost the simmer point where it actually boils up. But we're not going to allow it to boil, so it's going to take a little more time and a little more love and tender care. Okay, I need my towel because this is hot. Okay, we're going to put that there. Now, I've got my water boiling here and I got the strainer in. I don't crowd my lasagna pasta. I drop it in, and when there's enough in there where they're going to, get stuck or whatever, just move it around a little bit, keep them from sticking. Because with this kind of pan, the beauty of this pan is I can drop what I need, bring it to the sink, drop them in cold water, and move on to the next 4 or 5 sheets I want to do. If you have the box pasta, you can dump it in there. You move these around. See this? See how they're going to float? They're going to float and they're going to keep their nice shape. And it's going to be great like that. Okay. Now this is fresh pasta. So when it floats, it's ready. Okay? I'm going to go in front of you, Carl. And then you just come over to your sink. You put them in cold water. There we go. And we come over. And we're going to drop in a few more. There we go. Your water stops boiling, just put the cover on. It'll be fine. Come up to a boil real quick again. I'm just going to grab some more sheets. Okay, we're going to start assembly. I have 3 small tins here. Usually this makes a huge lasagna. I don't need that much lasagna, but I did want to show you how to make it. So I'm going to break it up into 3 meals. I'm a big believer of while you do it, do enough to freeze some. There we go. I'm going to put some spray in the bottom of the pan. Now I'm going to do 3 different kinds of lasagna. Okay. We're going to drop a little bit of Alfredo in the bottom here. And just kind of like move it around. Like so. I want a little more. Just to coat the bottom of the pan. Okay. And we're going to have a little red sauce in this one. That's just a regular tomato sauce. I've done that before. Use your favorite sauce. Now in this one, I'm going to do a little twist. I'm going to do a little red, and I'm going to do a little white, just to give it a little bit of a different, my daughter would call this, I think she calls it, I forget, rouge or something, a little silly. All right, we're going to take a sheet of pasta, and we're going to put it in the bottom. Okay, now some of these are a little bigger than others. Okay, I always try to save the prettiest ones for the top. Because the top, it's important to make sure it looks good. Just piece them in here, like so. So they're a little bit smaller than what I wanted, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. Let me get a knife, because this pasta is a little thicker than regular, so you don't really need to double it up. That's why I make it a little thicker. And there we go. Can you see, Carl? Okay. Now we're going to take, on the Alfredo one, some spinach on the, well, you know what? No, I'm going to take that back. We'll put a little more Alfredo sauce here. Okay, because we want the noodles to be able to absorb the sauce. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to do the same thing here. A little bit of this. And a little bit of this. Oh yeah, that's going to be good. Now we're going to take a little spinach and we're going to put it in here. Now, I want you to notice that lasagna does not have to be just ricotta and cheese. It can be vegetables. You can make a vegetable lasagna. It can be meat. There's a lot you can do with a lasagna. So don't set yourself up to just do a regular plain lasagna. It's not necessary. Now on this spinach Alfredo, I have a smoked Gouda, herbed Gouda cheese. It's a very sharp cheese, so I'm not going to put a lot into it. But I want to change the flavor of this lasagna. I don't want it to be like the other lasagnas. I want it to be different. And just add enough to just put on top of the cheese for the first row. Okay? Now on my regular cheese lasagnas, I love provolone cheese. And I'm going to put a bed of provolone cheese on the bottom of this one. Okay? And on this one, I'm going to do half with spinach. Okay? Like that. And I'm going to use a little bit of this, very, very little. Okay? Because I don't want to mess up my flavors. And then, on this side, we're going to use some provolone cheese. So this is a combination of these two. Okay? Now I'm going to take my ricotta. I'm going to drop a scoop in the middle. Okay. Oh! Don't make a mess. Sometimes I get carried away. I can't help myself. Just automatically happens. And you're going to push this in. Spread it out nice and even. Okay. Now if you want, you can put a little more Romano cheese in there. I don't put Romano cheese in the layers a lot of the times because the Romano cheese is in the ricotta itself. So if everything is surrounded by the Romano cheese, then what happens is you don't get the flavor of the Romano cheese in the ricotta because it's all mixed in. I like everything that I cook to have its own little flavor, not to everything mashing together. All right, so I'm going to use my finger there, sorry. They're clean, I washed them. All right, now, We're gonna, you know what? This one just looks like he got gypped. We're gonna give him a little more. He kind of looks like, yeah, there's something missing there. All right. That's a pretty one. I'm saving it for the top. Alrighty, here we go. Sometimes they stick together. Just pull them apart nice and easy. No big deal. And you're gonna press a little bit. Oh, isn't that a cute one? Okay. As you can see, I don't really worry about if they look exactly the same. Okay. I'm going to cut a couple of these in half because I don't, like I said, I don't want to overlap too much. This one I am going to put a whole piece because this guy, I don't know, he's missing stuff. There we go. All right. And this, I'm going to cut this way as this one needs a bigger piece and this one needs a smaller piece. Now I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so I'm going to have plenty with a little piece to spare right here. So we're going to take a little bit of sauce because when I pile pasta, more than one layer, I got to have some sauce. It needs to pull some moisture in somehow. Otherwise, I think it just all clumps together. Yuck, we don't want clumpy. Clumpy ain't going to work. All right, so now we're going to do the Alfredo. We're going to do the red. And we're going to do 1 and 2. I know I keep dipping this Alfredo thing in here and I'm getting red on my white. That's okay. That happens too. It'll still be delicious. Alrighty. Now, we're going to do another layer of the ricotta. I like to have a couple of layers. When we were younger, my mother used to just put one big thick layer of ricotta, and I loved it like that. But I also like it like this too. You know, if you want to use a measuring cup to make sure that you're giving everybody their fair share, go right ahead. That's a good way to do it. But me, I eyeball it, and I just kind of like, okay, this guy's got too much. We're going to put it over there. And we're going to spread this out. Okay. Now I am going to cheese this one again lightly because I want some flavor of this in the ricotta up here. Okay. This cheese is wonderful. I did a chicken with it too. Oh my goodness, it's great. I love it. Okay, and then we're going to just put a little more on across the top here. Alrighty, and I'm going to do very light cheese over here. I don't want a lot of cheese on this layer. Okay. I like a cheesy lasagna, you know. Give me my cheese. Alrighty. Now we're going to put their hats on. All right. I've used American cheese also in lasagna. If you like American cheese, it's got a good flavor to it. These we're going to have to piecemeal a little tiny bit right here and right here, and push your lasagna down a little bit. Make sure it's nice and flat. You don't have any frost heaves, because if there's a big clump of ricotta, it's gonna swell, and you're gonna have a Quasimodo lasagna with frost heaves, I call them. So press it down. There we go. Alrighty. That's that. Now we're going to finish it off with some more sauce on the top. Okay. Okay. All right, so now naturally, I'm going to, or as my niece would say, how did she say? Actually, my niece Lauren, what a beauty. Okay, I'm gonna take my wax paper and I'm gonna spray it. I'm gonna show you one because I have a thing with tin and food. I don't like aluminum foil on my food. It really bothers me. I don't know why. But people ask me, Tina, why are you always putting wax paper over your tin foil? I can't stand when tin foil touches my food. It's a thing. Let me grab my, where's my scissors? Right here, sorry. We're gonna trim this back, okay? Because that will smoke in your oven. And then we're gonna take aluminum foil or tin foil. I'm dating myself, tin foil. Okay. And we're gonna do this. We're gonna seal it nice and tight. And I do cook my lasagnas covered. I don't cook them uncovered. I don't like that crispy, crunchy, break your teeth. That's not me. Alrighty. Now, if I was just gonna put these in the freezer, I would write on the tin foil what kind of lasagna it is. Because when you do it this way, you got 3 meals here. This is a great, if you work, this is a great savings of time and you can have a delicious meal. I'm gonna finish wrapping these. We're gonna put them in a 350-degree oven and they're gonna cook, isn't that special? And they're gonna cook for about 45 minutes and we're gonna check them because when you cut into the center, this regatta should not be runny. It's gonna be nice and fluffy. And we'll check them in about 45 minutes. Okay, our lasagnas have baked about an hour at 350. I've let them rest 15 minutes so that they can all, you know, settle in. We're gonna cut a piece of the sauce one. Okay. The third one that I mixed everything, I just froze because that's gonna be a good supper for me and Carl. Alrighty, there's the sauce one. And another thing, when you're making lasagna, you can use mozzarella cheese. It was brought to my attention after the fact that I never even took any out. So you can use mozzarella, you can use provolone, you can use whatever you like to use. I'm gonna put a little extra dab of Alfredo sauce here like this. Oh, you can smell the smoked Gouda. Oh, geez, does that smell delicious? A little extra sauce here. I'm gonna set these down here. And naturally, without a doubt, a little bit of Romano cheese. Oh yeah, doesn't get any better than that. All right, now I'm gonna grab this fork and I'm gonna try the Alfredo one. I'm a little partial to that. This is one of my great inventions for my father-in-law's birthday party. This is gonna hurt. You know what? You gotta try this one. I hope that answers your lasagna question and gives you an idea for some lasagnas. Get cooking. Oh, if I can get this in here. Carl, if we get any shells in here, it's for you, okay? Make sure you get that piece. You're gonna get a big ball of cheese. You dropped it on the floor, you swine man. All righty. And this is the regatta for our lasagna.